Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another great interview. And today I have Derek Andersen, who's the founder and CEO of StartupGrind. Derek, how you doing?
Fantastic.
Thanks for being here, man. I know you run a pretty big organization. What you guys are in like 80 countries and like 170 something cities?
Yeah, we StartupGrind. Our mission is to educate every entrepreneur in the world, and we do that through events that we host and through through things like we have hundreds of hours of footage from top entrepreneurs on our YouTube channels and on our website. And so it started out in my office a few years ago, just kind of as a way for me and my friends to help each other and to get to know each other and help each other's businesses, and that that kind of organically grew, and until people started saying, hey, this is cool, can I do this in my own city, and beyond our friends and then to them, and now we're in a couple hundred cities and kind of doing the same thing we were always doing, but just on a bigger scale.
Nice. Yeah, I was looking at your lineup for your upcoming event. I mean, you've got like all the heavy hitters, man. You've got Mark Andreessen, you've got Dustin from Facebook, Aaron from Vox. Like, this is like the premier like meetup, I guess, or seminar or conference. What would you call it? Conference?
It's a conference. It's our global conference. So if somebody's looking forward to startupgrind.com/conference, you can check that out. We basically once a year, we just needed an excuse to bring everybody together. So we said, hey, let's do it here in the Valley. Let's do it in February when flights are cheap and the weather's not terrible compared to a lot of places in the world. And it's not Texas, but it's all right. And then let's just get the best, smartest people in the world to come and try and suck out of them what we can. And it's really fun. It's a couple of days, and would recommend anybody to come that's building their own business or wants to get a business going and just wants to learn from the best. There's something about seeing someone, listening to someone in person that you just don't get. You get different things like a podcast. I listen to podcasts on my way to work, so like you get this. It's got this like good form factor for certain use cases, right? And live presentations or live interviews have their own kind of place. And I know for me, like there are definitely different interviews and people I've heard speak that have made a big impact on me, and a lot of those were live. So some were definitely on a podcast, some were on a video I watched on YouTube, but there's still something really special about seeing somebody in person.
Yeah, and I guess the people that you meet at an event like that, you just can't get through watching it online. And I know some guys that have gone and they're like, man, it actually completely changed my business because I met this person who introduced me to this person, and now they're my CTO or whatever. So
well, that's what I say at my events. I say, look, if after we hear from like a really successful, interesting entrepreneur or venture capitalist or something, I'll say, look, if you walk out of here without meeting somebody, you should consider yourself a huge failure. If you didn't help push somebody here to the next level for their own business, the values of StartupGrind are super simple, and it's the heart of what we do, and that's that people come, they're going to help someone first, they're going to give before they take, and that they're going to make friends. And so if they just come and like, hey, I'm going to listen to speaker and then I'm going to have some food and then leave, like you're just missing this whole other element of what you can get out of this. And a lot of times it is that relationship that you meet, it is that partnership that you make, and those things can those things can change the trajectory of your business if it's the right person at the right time. And if you're not there, then you'll never even see that opportunity. And like South by is the same thing down in Austin. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have been to that or go to that every year, maybe. I bumped into the CEO, or he wasn't the CEO at the time, but he was the founder of Intuit on the street in Austin, and that led to a conversation where he started speaking at our events and they sponsor our events. And, so you just don't, if I had stayed home, like I would have never had that opportunity. So, getting out there and meeting people and just trying to add value to the people it's good business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so easy to kind of be a hermit as an entrepreneur and just kind of put your head down and grind it out. But, it's amazing what happens when you open yourself up to opportunities like that. And like you said, give first, help first, add value first, and then you'll kind of naturally attract people to you. So tell me a little bit about, so we have a lot of first time entrepreneurs that watch the show and listen to it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of theme that you notice from first time entrepreneurs that they get from Startup Grind, or kind of what would be like a most important lesson that you would suggest that people walk away with? Is it how to raise capital, how to build a strong management team, or is it kind of all the above?
I mean, everybody in whatever cycle they're in has their own specific needs. I think as general principles of entrepreneurship, kind of foundational blocks, the first thing is that you can't give up. I mean, every single successful person I've interviewed, dozens, hundreds of the most successful entrepreneurs in technology. And every single one of them has at least one, but most of them have many, many, many moments where they could give up, they should give up, but they don't. And, most of the people I meet with or that I interview are not geniuses, maybe like 2%. I'd say like that dude is a genius. Most of them are smart, but even some aren't. You'd be like, geez, how did that guy start that? Or how did she start that? And, I'm smarter than him. I'm smarter than her. I have that, I wrongly have that thought all the time, but that's a motivating thought, right? To say, hey, if she could do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I think this idea of just saying like, I am not going to give up. I am going to find a way. I had a point about 3.5 years ago, right as StartupGrind was kind of starting to get some traction. I was working on another business, and we were running out of money. I mean, we had a few. I've read about these things, and like I always think it's just a bunch of bull. But honestly, like I had a check in my wallet for a few $1,000s. I had less than $5,000 in my bank account. Much less. I don't know the exact number, but I can comfortably tell you it was less than 5,000. And we were shutting down servers. We were shutting down services so that we didn't have to spend money on this product we were working on, which was basically dying. And somehow, by some way, I thank God every day. I'm sure it was just him, but by some method, we figured out how to make some money and sell the company. And we sold the product, and that gave us enough money for another 8 months. And the moment that was signed, like that was like the valley of the shadow of death. And I remember exactly where I was. I remember I had this long drive after it happened. And like, I knew at that moment that if I could survive what I had just survived over the last 6 months, that I could survive anything. Nothing could be what I had just gone through. And then when we figured it out, it was a miracle. Nice. And we figured it out. And most people would have just gone home and given up or gotten a job. And we're all employable people. So everyone has that moment in some way or another. And some people have it a dozen times. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is that patience is the friend of the entrepreneur. Nothing happens quickly. Products don't get built. Great products don't get built quickly. Customers don't get found quickly. Team members and relationships for teams don't happen overnight. These things take a long time to mature and to materialize. And if you're going to run out of money in 3 months and you just started, you're screwed. And it's your own fault. Like, if you have to create a way for yourself to have time, and that could be with your family. Like, if your wife is going to tell you you have 3 months, or I'm leaving you if you don't start bringing in money, that's your fault. Like, you can't ruin your family because of your job. So you have to create a scenario for yourself where you don't run out of time, you don't run out of money, you don't ruin your family. you hold these kind of fundamental things intact while you have enough time to figure it out. And everyone I have spoken with has created time for themselves to get to that point where they eventually had success. They eventually had product market fit. They eventually found customers that wanted their product. But nobody does it quickly. And some people, it could take 5 or 10 years. Facebook was a business that took 7 years to build, right? So, when you think, hey, I want to make $1 million this year, or hey, like that would be cool to like work for myself and make $1 million, or I want to make $10 million, I want to make $100 million. These things just take time. It starts with 1,000, and then 10,000, and then 50,000, and then 100,000. It just takes time, and you have to create an environment where you won't kill yourself.
Yeah. So the two things I got from that patience and perseverance. And the one thing that I hear from entrepreneurs is, well, how do you know when you should keep pushing and, like just stay the course? And how do you know when you should pivot or quit? Because at some point for some companies, they're just not ever going to succeed. Do you have like a piece of advice or something that you would look for in a business to say like, okay, yeah, this isn't worth working on, versus no, you should just stay the course and keep persevering?
If an entrepreneur asks me, should I keep going? Is it time to hang it up? I would say, I would completely flip the question and say, is it time for you to hang it up? Have you pushed it as far as you could push it? It's not a question that anybody but the entrepreneur should ever answer. And, look, there are outside factors that come in that make it the only option at times to do that, whether it be can't make payroll. I've mentioned the family thing. Like some of those scenarios, you don't have a choice, but it's impossible to say unless you're the entrepreneur. And but there are examples of people that keep banging their head against the cement wall and eventually it breaks. And there are a lot more examples of people that break their neck doing it. So but you have to trust your gut. You have to be realistic. You have to step back. One thing that I'm not very good at a lot of things, but one of the few skills I'm really grateful that I have is that I'm not on the platform as it burns into the ocean. I'm passionate. I have a chip on my shoulder about everything. I take everything personally. I'm paranoid. I'm all of those things. But if I'm building a product that sucks, I'm smart enough and can pull myself out of this situation enough to say, this is going really, really badly. Turn and walk away, or turn and move. And a lot of people just stand there and watch it burn, and they're trying to get buckets of water and they've got an inferno around them, and when they need to just move on, and then they wait until it's too late, and then it's too late. So I would just say, like, be realistic, have great advisors, have people that are not financially invested in you, giving you advice. Some people have their parents, some people have their college professors, some people have, spiritual leaders, some people have their siblings, whoever, people that are close to you that are not trying to make money off you. Get advice from those people, smart people on what you should do, mentors on what you should do and what their advice is, and then do what you think is best. Get lots of great advice, and then do what you think is best and what you're passionate about, and that will ultimately be the right answer, is what's best for you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that from people that aren't incentivized to have you steer kind of a certain direction. So, Derek, let's go back to that company that you said you sold. What industry was that, or what product was that?
The product was called Common Red, and in 2011, 2010, we started building a product. It was a professional social network designed to take your online social data, take someone else's online social data, and match the things up that you had in common. So I could, before we chatted today, I could have gone and looked in 2010 or 2011 and seen, all the people we knew in common across all the social networks, all of our common traits, all these, all these things, similar places, similar, languages we might speak, places we've lived, whatever. And so at the time, this was like, we're sucking in all this cool data that was available, but it wasn't, in one place. And so this seemed like a really great idea. There's a couple of problems. One is that also LinkedIn, who I'm just generally not a huge fan of for a number of reasons. It just seems like it's even still, it's gotten much, much, much better. But like, I don't know what connecting means with people. People walk up to me all the time and say, hey, can I connect with you? It's like, well, we're talking. Isn't this like, can't we connect right now? And I just like that whole, it just feels like this, it feels like a game from high school, which I'm just not interested in playing anymore. And so like the relationships I have, they're not on LinkedIn. Anyways, here I am, I'm monologuing on LinkedIn. I don't hate LinkedIn that much anymore. But we thought, hey, this LinkedIn's not solving these problems. Let's try something else. Well, what happened at that time was when we started, LinkedIn had 50 million users, and when we finished, they had 150 million users. So we kind of made this very basic and critical mistake, which was not to recognize that LinkedIn had already won the market. And it didn't matter if what we were building was 10% better or 20% better. They already had the network effect. They already had critical mass. And so, but what we did was after a year and a half, we built this really cool technology. And, we had talked to different people. I'd had a few people ask about it and say, hey, what are you going to do with it? They knew we weren't taking off with users. But the technology was good. And, somebody said, hey, I'd like to buy that technology and use that for one of our products. And so that's what we did.
Nice.
So
you had to exit at the very last minute.
It really was. It really was the very end of, I don't know what we would have done. I don't really know what we were trying to figure out how to start StartupGrind. StartupGrind was getting some momentum. So we kind of saw, hey, there's something here. We were kind of spending one day a month on that, and it was getting all this traction. We're spending 29 days a month on this other thing that people didn't really like, even though it was, we thought the technology was pretty good. And so, we just, the sale became basically our own angel funding for, to get StartupGrind going.
So Derek, what was the biggest challenges you faced building StartupGrind? I know you said so that you use the sale of that first business to start StartupGrind. After that point, what was the biggest challenge that you faced building that?
One of the biggest challenges we've faced is just keeping everyone on the same page. You've got people that are volunteering. You've got people in dozens of different countries. They've got full-time jobs, so they're doing this as like a side 20% project. They're doing it because they're passionate about it, but they got other stuff they need to do. So, what we decided very early on is everything was going to be as simple as possible, and everything was going to be suited to the person that had to run it. And even for 2 years, I ran my own events, and every month we did something different to try to make it easier for us, better for the end user, better for the speaker, but also better for us. So it's like this constant, like, you're solving three people's problems. But I knew if it was easy for me, then I would do more events. If it became really hard for me and took a lot of time, then I was going to stop running these events, and then it would die. So so everything inside of StartupGrind is super simple. Like our events, we only do one type of event. It's a fireside chat. It's 3 hours long. It's really, really easy. And we just don't make exceptions to that. We don't do panels. We don't do TED Talks. We don't do hackathons. Those things are all great. It's just not what we're good at. And so that's like the intangible of that has been that pretty much if you attend a StartupGrind in Austin or in Pakistan or Iran or wherever you go, it should feel like StartupGrind. It should feel the same way wherever you go. And I think that's pretty hard to pull off. And so that was one thing. The other thing is that, the mission and the goals, because they were so simple, it ended up becoming really, really clear. And so people, you either stand for something or you stand for nothing. And so, this idea of people saying, well, like, hey, can you do a workshop for me? It's like, that would be cool, but we don't do that. you know, and is it, and, or a sponsor or somebody else saying, hey, can you run a hackathon for me? It's like, I know 3 or 4 other great groups that you should run a hackathon with. It's not us. And
so
then
you just identified exactly what you guys do and then focus on that and let everybody else run all the different types of events like hackathons.
And that's like, and that exactly. And that's like a series of like 1,000 different conversations where we probably came off looking like jerks, but we as in me, you know, like, geez, Derek always says no to everything. And I'm like a pretty mellow, easygoing guy. Like I don't like conflict. I like saying yes. I'm not good at saying no to stuff. I ask my employees if they ask for stuff, I usually give it to them because I'm just not good at saying no. But I knew that for StartupGrind, like we would not lose focus or we would die. We had so little money. Even still, we have so few resources. Like every dollar has to be spent almost perfectly. And every program has to be good. And we still make lots of mistakes, but like when we make mistakes, it's when I say, oh, we should try this. And we like try some new thing that is not core to what we do. Those are the big mistakes I've made. And it takes me 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 months to realize what I've done. And then I just bring it right back to where we were and just keep plowing ahead with what we've been doing. And then the machine gets going again in the right direction.
Nice. So what are your revenue streams? I know for the conference that you have coming up, you sell tickets to that. Is that your main source of revenue for this? Or do you have like a licensing model for all the branches around the world or?
Yeah, our revenue model is super simple. We take a percentage of all ticket revenue and all sponsorship revenue that happens in all the local chapters. We're not a franchise. We don't charge anyone to use our product up front. It's not about revenue for us. It's really we are an impact company. It's a bootstrap company, so you know we're not answering to shareholders. We're not trying to. Of course, we want to be successful, but you know we don't have this time sensitivity of we have to sell by this date or our investors aren't going to get their money. It's for us. It's you know we work with great people, so we'll work in a big city like Dallas or Austin, and then we'll work in a small little village in Somalia, you know, just because we think that if we find the right people, then we're doing the right things. So it's primarily, you know, tickets and sponsorships. 75,000 people attended our events this year at about 1,200 events. So, you know, we get a lot of people. We have a small team here that kind of runs the global operations and an engineering team that builds tools that help make those events and those communities easier to run and to manage. And then we have our conference.
Nice, man. That's great. I mean, you guys are like everywhere. What's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody looking to start? Let's go 2 parts of this. So maybe like just a tech startup, like if somebody's a first-time entrepreneur, and then maybe if somebody wanted to follow in your footsteps and create like a global brand or something that was hosting multiple live events.
Well, if somebody wants to do a startup, I would encourage them to solve a real problem, and don't just quit your job and say, hey, I'm just gonna start something. Be thoughtful about it. Make sure it is a real problem. It could be a small real problem, and that's great. But make sure it's a real problem. And then if you're you know, build your team. So if you're not, let's take the instance that you're not technical, you're not an engineer. What I would encourage you to do is go have lunch with about 75 engineers. Go attend meetups. Go attend StartupGrind. Go attend, you know, other things where you can meet people. Reach out to everyone you know. Ask them to introduce you to any engineers that they know, and take them to lunch. And don't expect anything. All you should do is try to add value to them. And if you do, the advice I got once from somebody is that you should find the best 2 or 3 and beg them to work with you. And that's, I think, great advice. So if you want to build a startup, your core has to be technology. No one's going to buy your company. No one's going to buy your product if you have bad technology, if you have team members that can't build great technology. So, so solving the team problem, solving a real problem, if you do those two things, you have a chance. You know,
awesome.
you have a chance. You know, startups are, you are a dead body on an operating table until proven otherwise. So, you know, you have no pulse. Your body, the body has no pulse. There's no chance of success. They've always said, oh, well, you know, 95% of startups fail. No, 100% of startups fail. Like, you might be able to succeed, but, you know, just, it's going to fail. Just plan on it. And somehow you've got to get a pulse. So you get a great team member, get a good co-founder. You give them a generous amount of equity that vests over 4 years. You got a blip on the radar. You know, you find a great designer to work on the team who will work for equity. You just blipped again. You know, these things, and it's 100 blips, and then you move from ICU, and maybe they push you on a gurney into, you know, another room in the hospital where, you know, you're kind of in and out of a coma, and, you know, eventually, if you're really, really lucky, you might get out of bed and walk around the hospital. You know, at which point you'll be sent back to bed, you know, for 2 days and not move. This is what doing a startup is like. So, you know, find a way to get a pulse. That's my, you know, recommendation.
I love it. Assume that you're dead from the start, and then keep working to get out of that. I think a lot of people start off too optimistically, thinking that they're running when they're really dead.
I'm going to be Mark Zuckerberg. I'm the next greatest thing since sliced bread. And you need that kind of blind optimism. But at the same time, like, I mean, look, I thought I would have been on the cover of Inc. magazine 3 years ago, or else I probably wouldn't have quit my great job that I had. So there's nothing wrong with you know, with a reality distortion field. We know that. We've seen it time and time again. But you know, do what you need to do. Like, you know, life's not, you know, life. I heard somebody say this yesterday, that they're very optimistic, that they just, like, you know, that life just tends to work out if they're just, and I said, no, like, life works out when you make it work out. Like, when you show up every day and you know, if you don't go to the gym, you're going to get fat. I mean, this is not brain surgery. You know, like, if you don't hustle and work every hour of every day in the beginning, you will die on the table. And just plan on it. You're already dead. Like, so, you know, anything else is, I mean, the other thing is, you know, oh boy, Derek, you really set your bar low, right? It's like, well, you know, if I succeed, I'm, you know, you're 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000. And there's different levels of success, right? So success in a tech startup might be some big exit and Google buys your company or something. But other great exits might be, hey, you run a $1 million business, or you run a $250,000 business, and you have 1 employee, and you take care of your family, and you go on vacation when you need to go on vacation, and you know, like that, and you live in Texas, you live like a king.
Yeah.
That to me is more successful than, you know, than most of the startup people I see, most of the entrepreneurs I see. So you got to define.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people think that they have to be the next, like, Zuckerberg, or they have to create the next Instagram, but there's nothing wrong with creating, like, a, you know, a business that makes you a few $100,000 or a few $1,000,000 a year. A lot of people, I think, would be happy with that. So, like, you consider that, what would you consider that? Would you consider, like, $1 million business, like, still on the table with no pulse, or would you consider that, like, you're running?
No, you're running. I mean, if you're doing that kind of revenue, if you're getting people to pay you $1 million in money in a 12-month period of time, you have something very special. So, you know, I had a really successful, wealthy guy here in the Valley tell me one time. I was talking to him about, you know, oh, you know, this person, you know, had a $10 million exit or something. Like, oh, you know, I kind of, like, said it negatively, like, oh, you know, and he said, do you know how many people have $10 million in their bank account? He said, basically 0%, right? So pull that back a little bit. Well, how many people have $1 million in their bank account? Still almost no one,
Yeah.
right? So like, okay, you know, I literally live on the same street as Mark Zuckerberg. Like he lives 5 or 6 houses down from me. I rent, okay, so don't get any ideas. You know, you know, to his credit, he's not this like arrogant, flamboyant guy. He lives in a totally normal neighborhood. It's not a gated neighborhood. You know, it's Palo Alto, so it's beautiful. But you know, he lives within 300 yards of, you know, some really, you know, some apartment complexes that are very, you know, that are places you probably wouldn't want to live. So, you know, like he's, you know, but like if I compare myself to Zuckerberg, who lives 5 houses down from me, guess what? Like I'm going to hate myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not competing against Mark Zuckerberg, who went to Harvard. You know, I'm competing against Derek Andersen, who went to BYU and who, you know, started his career at Electronic Arts in video games. You know, like I'm competing against the guy who, you know, who moved around all his life and, you know, did what he had to do. And like I'm trying to beat that guy. Like I look at it as like, if you know those old video games like Mario Kart or other games where you have the ghost and like you can race the ghost.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Beat your previous lap, right?
Yeah, beat your previous lap, right? Like that's who I am personally. That's who I'm competing against. And if I ever start to get, if I ever start to get distracted and I start like trying to compete with Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or somebody else, like I'll lose. You'll lose that game. Everybody loses that game. Even the guys that are running billion-dollar companies, they lose that game. And I've heard them. I've heard guys who are running businesses that are making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe not hundreds of millions, but maybe $100 million, say, like, oh, I wish I had that company,
Oh
and
my
refer to
God.
somebody else. Like,
Wow.
it's always greener, unless you're satisfied with being who you are and creating what you're creating. And personally, I'm extremely comfortable in my own skin and building what I'm building, and not worrying about what other people say. Of course, I want to be. Of course, I want to be a huge business. Who doesn't? If you're in this space, of course, I want. Of course, I'd like to be on a magazine cover. Of course, I'd love to be, you know, honored and this and that. Of course, but those things do not define my success. My success for me is defined as my wife is not going to leave me. My kids love me. I can pay for and take care of my team members and employees, and I can personally live a good life. I can live comfortably, and I live in Palo Alto. I live compared to the rest of the world. I live pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
I don't drive, you know, a Tesla, but I live pretty comfortably, and so that's success for me. And so I'm sorry. I don't know where your question was. I don't know where I am now.
I'm letting you go, man. This is all great.
I'm going to stop talking. So I'm sorry. Everyone's already tuned out. You've lost the
Not
the
at
numbers
all,
have
man.
dropped off, you know, so
Not
dramatically.
at all. What's next? Like, what is the end goal or the big vision for Startup Grind, or are you there now? Like you said, I mean, you've identified, I think, what true wealth means to you. Where are you on the spectrum of where you want Startup Grind to be or go?
Well, I want to preface this by saying this is not where I would have, if you had asked me 6 years ago. February is when we held our first event. A friend and I started it, and you know there was 9 people there. And if you had asked me that night, where do I want this to go? I would have told you, I hope that we do this next month. You know, I would not have told you what I'm going to tell you now, which is what our mission is and our vision is for now is that we hope, we aspire to educate every entrepreneur in the world. So this is something I learned over time as I began to see what we could do. So, but I do see it now. I see it clearly now that we can, you know, we have an opportunity with the timing, the place, the brand, the values that we share in our community, that we can do something really special and help educate and create the world's next generation of entrepreneurs. I hope that the next Mark Zuckerberg attends one of our events. I mean, that would be the dream. and that has an impact on him. It might be like, man, that was the worst thing I ever, that like almost made me quit. It's like, well, we don't, but that's what we aspire to be. And it could be the entrepreneur in Tehran. It could be the entrepreneur in the Gaza Strip, who only has power, 6 hours out of the day. It could be the entrepreneur trained in Tel Aviv. It could be in Austin. It could be wherever. We want to go where the entrepreneurs are, and my experience is that great entrepreneurs live everywhere. So
that's a powerful mission, man. That's really, really powerful, and it's great that you guys already have such a global reach. Derek, what would you say? So there's two camps. You have one camp that says put all your eggs in one basket and have like one source of income. Then you have other people that say diversify and have as many sources of income as possible. Which camp are you in?
Oh man, this is where my reality distortion field comes into play. This works for me. And what works for me is that I bet on myself. I believe in myself. I put everything into myself. I don't have stock. I don't have I don't have publicly traded stock. I started writing about companies too, and you should know companies you write about. So that was years ago. But since then I've never repurchased. I just don't. I don't spend time and energy following the market. I don't. I do try and put money into 401k, but outside of that, I am fully betting on Derek Andersen, and I am my biggest investor by far, and my wife. She's also a big investor in me and in us. It's not just me, it's us.
And when you say investor in you, does that mean StartupGrind or more intangible stuff like your education and stuff like that as well?
I mean, it means both, but at the moment it's StartupGrind, right? So I believe in my own abilities more than I believe in the market's abilities to make my family money. I'm 33, so I'm not, depending on how you look at it, I'm either not that young or I am still young. The world hasn't hit me in the face yet for that. I quit. I had a great job 6 years ago at Electronic Arts. I walked away in the middle of the Great Recession because I bet on myself. And I didn't know the Start thing was going to blow up. I didn't know. I never would have guessed I'd be doing StartupGrind. I thought I'd be doing something completely different. And but this is where I'm at, and I still think that the upside is in me, not in the market. And so I don't know. Well, maybe that changes next time we talk. But for now, I'll just keep investing in myself, investing in my company, investing in my skills. And, hopefully I can become what I think, and I can accomplish what I think I have the potential to accomplish.
I love that. I'm a firm believer that the best investment you can make is in yourself. On that note, do you have a book that you think is required reading for every entrepreneur?
Yeah. Founders at Work. Absolutely. The most influential, best entrepreneurial book that I think exists. It was written by the co-founder of Y Combinator, Jessica Livingston. She interviewed all the top, some of the top technology entrepreneurs. Some of it's a little technical if you're completely not technical, but mostly it's not. This is how I actually did it. And it's very real, and it feels very organic, and kind of tangible in how she talks about it. And so I think that's a great book in terms of developing products and getting to something that people will buy. The 4 Steps to the Epiphany by Steve Blank it's like a textbook, but it is the step-by-step how you will get, how you pick markets, how you know customers like what you have, where you go from there, like what are the kind of the steps that you go in terms of building a product, and so I would recommend those 2 books.
Nice. Beautiful. We'll link those up in the show notes page. And you pretty much, I think, answered this, but I want to ask it and kind of make it explicit. What does true wealth mean to you?
That's a good question. Well, I'm not really that wealthy, so I can only I'm not wealthy. It's not that I am not that wealthy. I am not wealthy. Um, so I mean, I hope that I do become financially wealthy someday, and I hope when I do, I don't lose this perspective. But to me, I, being the richest guy in the cemetery, all those kinds of phrases and things you hear. The rich people I know, they're not happy because of how rich they are. Had a guy that's worth more than $100 million, very famous athlete, tell me one time, he said, Derek, after you pay for your cars and your mortgage, there's not a lot else to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And like you kind of think that, and I was complaining about trying to buy a house in Palo Alto, which is like, go look it up, go Google it, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And so but he's right. And so then what do you have? So like I said, if my wife loves me, if my kids love me, there's another great book that I love called How Will You Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen. And he talks about this, where all these guys that he went to Harvard with 10, 20, 30 years later came back to Harvard, and they were famous and wealthy, but their kids literally hated them. And they lived on the other side of the country. And he talked about, how could people from Harvard, the smartest people in the world, how could they let this happen? And it wasn't because they ever tried. They didn't get married thinking, I hope my kids hate me someday. It's because they just made bad decisions along the way, or they made decisions that were not in the best interest of those goals. And so they weren't bad decisions. The decisions were logical. Like, I'm going to work, till 2 a.m. I'm going to sleep at the office tonight because I want to get a promotion, because I'm going to take care of my family if I get a promotion. Well, in the end, that all those things add up to other consequences. So, anyways, so I think, to me, real wealth is that your family loves you, that you can look yourself in the mirror and be proud of your work. I think being creative is very important. To me, if I'm not creative, I don't sleep. Or if I'm not being creative at work, I don't sleep. When I'm very creative, I sleep pretty well. So I think those are probably the main things.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Any final advice for entrepreneurs?
Just keep grinding.
Keep grinding. I love it. Well, Derek, thanks for your time, man. I know you're a busy guy and you run a international organization and you have a lot of people pulling for your time. So I appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get value from this. So
yeah, thank you very much. And it was great to be on. And if I can help anybody that's listening, my email is Derek, DEREK, at StartupGrind.com. If you've made it this far, I'm happy to share my email. That is my only email. That's not some fake email. And most founders or founder CEOs, it's usually the first name and then their startup. So if you want to get a hold of somebody, go email them. It's not that hard to figure out. So, but if I can be helpful, please email me. And if there's something I can do.
Great advice. And thanks for putting that out there for everybody. And anybody that's going to the event February 2016, I'm definitely going to be there. So Derek, I hope to see you there. And when is that? That's the 23rd and the 24th, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time, man. And yeah, really appreciate it.